Hello friends, today I am filming the 2020 book freakout tag. I am going to do my best to not make this like a 30-minute video, but it is the first video on my channel where I'm really talking about books, so I probably will give synopsises or like reviews on a lot of them. I have my phone here that has all my notes because I have the brain of a goldfish and would forget what I wanted to say or what the books are about. To a certain extent. So yeah, we're just gonna dive right in. Small disclaimer first, I read a lot of my books on my Kindle and I get my books from the library because I think that a hard part of booktube is like the consumerism and always wanting to buy more books and always wanting to own something, and I like to save the money and I like to not own 100,000 books. So I mainly rent books from the library, which means that I'm not always up to date on like the hottest trends, or I just can't get them for 6 months because a lot of them have like 130 people on the wait list. So I only have some physical copies of books. I'll explain my system as this goes along, but keep in mind like that kind of skews my reading a little bit. We'll go from there. So the first question is the best book you've read so far in 2020. I do own a physical copy of this. I'm gonna try so hard not to pick this book for every good question on this list, but the best book that I've read so far in 2020 is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. It is a book that I feel like is super underrated, and of course I can say that because it was my favorite, but this book wasn't recommended to me by anyone. Nobody that I follow on Goodreads has even reviewed this. I just happened to see it one day on my library's website when I was trying to find out what else I wanted to rent. And I'm so glad that I picked it up. It is my favorite book. It's about a girl named Aderin, but she goes by Rin, and she lives in this small town called Corbin, and basically it has a dense forest that surrounds it, and anybody who dies within this stretch of forest can come back as a bone house. So basically a bone house is like a very different take on zombies. They're essentially zombies, but they're called bone houses, but they can't turn other people into zombies. They can just kill you, and I guess if you die within this forest you can come back as a zombie or a bone house. But it's Aderin's family owns and runs the local graveyard, so she is a grave digger. When she was younger, Aderin's father goes away to the mines and never returns, so Aderin has taken over the family business. But nobody in this small town necessarily believes in bone houses, because 95% of the time they just kind of wander aimlessly, no harm, no foul through the woods unless you come across them. But lately they've been getting closer and closer to town, and when that happens, Rin takes care of them. And so nobody really believes her, nobody really gives her the credit that she deserves for taking care of them, until the second character comes in. His name is Ellis, and he's a map maker, and they describe him as very scrawny. He has a bad shoulder, but essentially he's mapping the area because the maps that already existed were off by a super large margin, and so he wants to create this map, the best map of the area. He's stumbling through the woods one night when he's attacked by a bone house, and Aderin steps in, and then from there the bone houses get more and more aggressive and become an actual threat to the town. And Aderin and Ellis go on this journey to discover where the bone houses come from, why is it this stretch of woods, what can they do about it, and also Ellis is looking to map the area that they explore that nobody's been before. So it's kind of like an epic fantasy, I guess, but it really is a story about grief and loss and moving on after you've lost somebody who's so important to you. This book hits on a very personal level for me. That's probably why it's my favorite. But the relationship between Aderin and her father, and the reconciliation, and just the way that she processes her grief is really beautiful. And Emily Lloyd Jones does an amazing job of taking you on this whole journey with Rin, and just her thought process and her feelings, and how death can affect people in different ways, and how death can look in different ways. And I don't know, I cannot tell you enough. Please read this book. If you read it, let me know, or if you've read it, let me know. Come back, let me know if you read it. It's just, it is my favorite book, and I'm going to mention it a couple more times, so I'm going to move on. The second question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2020. I've only read a couple of sequels. This is technically the third book in a series, but it is The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson, and it is the third book in the Truly Devious series. It was supposed to be the final book, but an article was just sent to me by a friend a couple days ago that announced a fourth book in the series. But I think that if I understand correctly, she's kind of going a little more Nancy Drew, where now Stevie, the main character, is just solving different mysteries. If you don't know, the Truly Devious series is about a character named Stevie. She goes to this school, and the purpose of the school is that they like fund the passion projects of like really talented or like special students. And her passion project is solving the Truly Devious murders and what happened and why. So the third book, Hand on the Wall, was not my favorite. I think just because it was the third book and the last is supposed to be the finale, so it was like tying everything up with a neat bow. Those books are rarely my favorite. Normally the first book, and true in this case, is my favorite because it kind of gives you that world building and you introduced to the characters for the first time. So Truly Devious is my favorite, but Hand on the Wall was great. I had no complaints about it. I really enjoyed the way that she chose to wrap up the story. Like I said, if there had never been a fourth book, I would have been satisfied with the series, and it would have been one of my top series still. But now that I'm so excited to get the fourth book, and it's definitely like probably right now my most anticipated book of 2021. It's supposed to come out I think in April. So yeah, Hand on the Wall. Side note, I will mention a lot Nancy Drew vibes. I'm a Libra, born in October, was born and raised on Nancy Drew, the video games, like the computer games and the books. So I love Nancy Drew. I loved the CW show that just came out. So if I mention Nancy Drew, and that if you like Nancy Drew, you should try it. It's just like my seal of approval, I guess, because that's just my favorite. And Truly Devious definitely gives Nancy Drew vibes. So the third question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. So I picked two. Like I said, I get my books mainly from the library, and then if I really like the book, I'll go and buy a copy for my shelf, which is what happened with Bone Houses. I loved Bone Houses so much that I went and bought a copy. One, because the cover I think is beautiful. I'll show you it again. Like, so pretty. Owl Crate had a white and black version, and I was really tempted to buy that first or buy it in addition, but I ended up with this because it fit my shelf themes. Normally it sits right here, Bone Houses does, but I put this print of Wonder Woman just for sake of filming this video and having something in the background. But I will only buy books that I want to read again or just really fell in love with for my bookshelf. But I actually have one of my new releases. I bought it just the other day, and I'm going to buy the second one, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. So the first book is A Song Below Water, and it is by Bethany C. Morrow. It is set in Portland, Oregon, and it says that it's a town with very few black people, but it is about two sirens. One's name is Tavia, and one's name is Effie. I'm not sure like which one is which yet. I haven't read this. I just picked it up. It is a mix of fantasy with racism, social justice, misogyny, and current politics. I think that the cover on this is also beautiful. I cannot wait to read this. And yeah, I'm very excited. That is one of my new releases that I haven't read yet. The other new release that I haven't read yet that I'm going to pick up is A Song of Wraiths and Ruins by Roseanne A. Brown. It is based off of West African folklore, and it's about two characters. The first is Malik, who is a refugee, and him and his sisters are trying to get into the city to seek asylum, and while trying to get into the city, his younger sister is kidnapped by a spirit who will not return her sister unless he kills the crown princess, who is the second character, Corinna. Corinna just lost her mother and is trying to attempt to bring her back to life, but in order to do that, she needs the heart of a king. So she offers her hand in marriage to the winner of this contest that the city is having, and that kind of sets their two paths to collide, because Malik is entering the contest to marry Corinna, to get close to her, to kill her, and she is marrying whoever wins this contest to kill him, to bring back her mother back. but I think that they're like supposed to kind of fall in love or like have some romantic whatever. I don't know. I've heard amazing things about this book. I have seen so many people say that it is like a brilliant book, let alone for a debut of an author, and I am very excited. The next question is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't have the physical versions of either of these, and they were already released before the second half of the year, so I'm kind of cheating, but they were books that were released recently or have a lot of buzz recently, and they're about to come into my cart, like my loans, at the library, so that's why I picked them. The first is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which actually was just picked up by HBO, like the licensing to make a show or a movie about it. And HBO's done a really good job with that lately. I think that they did a great job with Big Little Lies with Reese Witherspoon, and they did a great job with Sharp Objects with Amy Adams, and Gillian Flynn is like my idol. I love her. I think that she's might be the best thriller author ever. So I'm really excited that they got the rights to this. If I understand correctly, The Vanishing Half is about two sisters, one who was very white passing, but they grew up in the South, and their paths kind of diverge as one is true to who she is and the other goes on to be white passing, and I don't think her husband knows that she's not white, but their paths then cross again because their daughter's paths cross. I might be doing a horrible job explaining this book, but it kind of seems to me like one of those ones that I don't want to fully know the plot before I go into it. I just want to kind of discover it as I read. A lot of people who I respect have been giving this a lot of 4 and 5 stars, so I definitely want to pick it up, and especially now that it got picked up for HBO, I want to read it before they make their show or movie. The second book is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I know a lot of people love N.K. Jemisin. It is essentially an urban fantasy. It is about New York City, and New York City has a soul that is protected by 5 people, or like is torn in 5 parts, and the 5 protectors are fighting against this evil that wants to destroy New York City. That's as much as I know. That's as much as I need to know. I am very excited, and I think it's like 4 weeks away from being in my cart or like on my loans. So I will definitely be making a video probably solely dedicated to the book, depending on if I like it or not. The next question is the biggest disappointment for 2020. I have 3 books that were just huge disappointments for me so far this year. I tend to not get super disappointed. I just don't love books, but these books definitely disappointed me. The first one, I am not going to talk super in depth about because I'm going to do a video where I read the top 5 thrillers according to Goodreads from last year. Spoiler alert, I hated this book. It's The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that last name, but I extremely disliked The Silent Patient. I know I'm not alone, but I'm definitely in the minority on this one. I'm going to save my rant and my thoughts for that thriller video. This book upset me so much that I originally gave it a 3, and I went back and gave it a 2 because I kept thinking about it and thinking about it after, like, days after I read it, and how much it upset me and how much it let me down. So on the flip side, I really played myself with this one. I'm a fool. I'm a clown. I don't know what's good for me. My most disappointing book of 2020 is Wicked Saints by Emily Duncan. So I kind of like reverse psychologied myself on this one. I read the reviews for Silent Patient and everybody loved it and I hated it. So I was kind of like, okay, maybe reading the reviews for Wicked Saints, every single person that I know and follow who read it was like, no, bad book, not worth your time, waste your time, meh, horrible, disappointing, whatever. And I was like, maybe I'm just the outlier. Maybe I'll like this book. Maybe it's just like, I'll give it my time. Maybe it'll be different. It was not. I did not enjoy it. I am very sad. Nothing just ever came to fruition the way that I wanted it to. I thought the plot was really good, or like the idea of the plot was really good, but it never built to the stage that I thought it would. I am very simple when it comes to romance. I like me some men who have some issues, who are big and not overly emotional at first, but might crack and show their emotions to the person they like and be soft. I'm very simple to please. I liked the idea of this romance. I actually liked reading some of the romance. I know some people had problems saying that it was like too love at first sight, but I really liked reading some of the romance. It's like the middle 50%, the first 25% of the book was alright, the middle 50% I liked, and then the last 25% like dive bombed. It was so bad. I felt like Emily Duncan just couldn't get out of her own way. And normally a book will take me anywhere between like 1 to 3 days to get through. This took me 2 weeks because I just couldn't get into it at first. Then I finished it like in 2 days and I was disappointed and sad. So also, honorable mention, because I don't know if I'll get to it in a book later in the year, Wilder Girls was also a disappointment and I would not recommend reading. The next question is, what is your biggest surprise of the year? And that is Pachinko. I would never have picked this book up for myself. It's a historical fiction book, which I'm not a big historical like based reader. It's just not my thing. A lot of the times they make me sad and uncomfortable, and I go for books that like get me to a happy place. But this book made me cry. It was so good. You'll also learn that I cry at a lot of things. Almost everything. I'll cry at least once. But this book was such a surprise. I really enjoyed it. It's about 4 generations of a Korean family and about their struggles with identity and sense of honor and how much of your life can you really control and what's outside your means. Like, what do you just have to persevere with? What is right and wrong, and how others perceive us. What is within our control and what is not when others perceive us. And basically the game of Pachinko is like a multi-billion-dollar, if I'm correct, deal or like gambling process in Japan, and a lot of the parlors are run by Koreans. It is a game with pins. I'm going to insert a picture here just of like what it looks like so you have an idea. But basically people will gamble at these machines and study how the pins are made so that when they drop their balls, like where the likeliness of it going is. But every night people will tinker with the machines, like the people who run the parlors, and will hit the pins just slightly to knock them in a different direction, which would send the ball in a different direction. And I don't know if the author like meant for this, but to me that's kind of like a metaphor for life. Like you can plan and plan and plan and have this life path picked out, but there are things that you can't control or things you didn't see coming, and that's kind of like those pins moving. And so yeah, Pachinko was really good. I recommend it to anybody. The next question is, who is your new favorite author, debut or new to you? I am trying to pick different books for these because to give you like a taste of what I like to read and what I have read. My new favorite author is Courtney Summers, and she wrote Sadie, and I loved this book so much. It was so out of left field. It was so unpredictable. It's about a girl whose sister has died and now she's gone missing. You read it from 2 perspectives, which is what I think made it so unique. You read it from Sadie's perspective, like as things are happening to her after she's gone missing, and then you read it from the perspective of somebody who is making a podcast about her and her sister, and you don't know at what point like their timelines are gonna collide and like at what time this is happening, and the podcast is discovering something, what is happening to Sadie. You don't know if like when you're reading them they're at the same time point, and it was just amazing. I've heard the audiobook for this is like incredible, so I'll probably go back and listen to the audiobook just to read it a second time because I enjoyed it so much. The next question is new fictional crushes. Rin from Bone Houses. I adore her to pieces. She was just a credible character. So yeah, Rin. And then also Gus or Augustus from Beach Read was great. Like I said, I love big, burly, complicated, emotionally stunted men. It's very unfortunate, but I really liked him. I loved his character progression, and yeah, I would date him probably. The next question is newest favorite character. Rin, but also the goat in this. I know it's weird to call like an animal your favorite character, and I can't even tell you why it's my favorite character because it'll give it away, but the goat in this book, I love it. Speaking of favorite animal characters, also Chainsaw, the Raven from the Raven Boys. I read the Raven Boys for the first time this year. Those 2 are my 2 favorite characters. I'm not going to explain it. it is what it is. The next question is a book that made you cry. Beartown. I was emotionally just distressed after this book, which is kind of like to be expected. This took me a long time to get around to actually reading because I knew it was so heavy and I wanted to be in the right mindset. Very quick synopsis, it's about a town that's like basically their livelihood depends on the success of their youth hockey teams. And the themes that it explores is sexual assault, so just like be warned, it is like a very heavy topic. And it's also kind of like, at what point are boys not allowed to just be boys? Like, what is the harm in saying boys will be boys? What is the harm in letting these actions continue? And at what point does being the star of something or really good at something make you invincible? And like, at what point should you be atoning for your actions? So I don't know, it's really hard for me to put into words how much this book changed me and how much this book meant. I work in sports, and hockey, like professional hockey, is the sport that I've worked the most with. So this book hit especially close to home because I understand where a lot of these characters are coming from and the world that they're in already. So they have a sequel, Us Against You, and that's also in my library cart. I think in 2 months I'll get it. That'll probably be my favorite sequel for the year because I've heard that it's even better than the first one, which is hard to imagine. But Beartown made me sob. Like, ugly cry, sob. Question 11 is a book that made you happy. The book that made me the happiest this year is Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. It is a middle grade book, but it reminded me so much of reading Goosebumps, and those books were like just my childhood. I read them so many times and left them in the car that the spines would start to crack or like fall apart. I live in Arizona and the heat would just destroy them because I would leave them in the car because I took them everywhere with me, especially like the ones where you got to like choose your own fate and pick what page numbers you went through. But this just very much gave me like Goosebumps fall vibes. It's about 3 children. The main character is Ollie. They go to this farm and are essentially hunted by scarecrows, and this, like, the message is stay away from large spaces, especially at night, stick to small. And it's about like grief also and like letting go. It is a middle grade book, but I think that if you're older you can like glean a lot more lessons from it. And I don't know, like, okay. My camera is literally turning off because I'm talking too damn long, but I have just 2 more questions. One is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. I don't have it yet. It's in the mail. I bought Circe, the gilded version. I think it's like more of a copper than a gold. It looks beautiful. I've seen other booktubers have it like on their shelves, and I had to have it. So I bought that. It's in the mail, but because of COVID, everything is taking so long. So I will be sure to show it like in a haul or in a wrap up soon. And I'm gonna just kind of speed round this a little bit because I'm going to be including 95% of these in upcoming videos that I have planned, so I'm not going to give you the synopsis for them. But the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Song of Achilles and Circe. I have had this book for 3 years. I need to read it. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. I'm a little scared I'm not going to like it, but I think I will. So this and Circe are on my list. Then I just picked this up at Target because I had an impulse buy, and it's been so long since I bought a book that I wanted to buy one. This is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I don't necessarily fully know what this is about. I think it's like a murder mystery where she is killed by somebody and you have to go through the different guests to see who killed her, kind of like Clue, I guess, or who done it. Excited for that. I just told you I wasn't going to give you the synopsis. Whoops. The next one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Need to read that. The last, or second to last, is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I have had this book for a while, but I'm also listening to it on audiobook. I think that just listening to her like tell her own story is really important, and I really enjoyed it, but it's taking me a lot longer to get through because I'm listening to it. And then the last one that I have on here is Leigh Bardugo. I want to read every Leigh Bardugo book that is out by the end of the year. I know that's a big feat. I haven't read any of them. I'm currently starting Ninth House, but I just started it. I've read like 3 pages. So yeah. If you've made it this far, you deserve an award. I am sorry that I talk so damn much. I just get really passionate and worked up and don't know when to stop. Thank you for all the support on the channel so far. The response has been like more than I expected. It's just, I really like it. And I really like talking to you about books. And I hope that we can connect over some of the books that I mentioned today. Let me know your answers to some of these questions. Let me know if you've read Bone Houses. And I'll see you next time.